Before we begin, a quick favor. If you've been enjoying the podcast, would you consider leaving a review? It really helps others find this space and join us on their own healing journey. If you haven't already, you can get your free IFS meditations and the Self-Led Pause Starter Kit at exploreifs.com. Welcome back to IFS Meditations and Insights. I'm Tim Fortescue, your guide on this journey toward wholeness through the lens of internal family systems. Together, we're creating a sacred space to explore, accept, and love all parts of ourselves. As we do this work, we open ourselves to experiencing divine love and living more authentically. Let's begin. In this session, I want to talk about something I think so many of us carry almost constantly, even when we don't realize it. And note too, I'm recording in spring in Wisconsin, and so hopefully the birds outside, if you hear them, add a little ambiance, whether you're listening to an insight like this or a meditation. But many of us carry the feeling of being rushed, not just busy, not just having a lot to do, but that deeper internal pressure that whispers, hurry, you're behind. You should be doing more. You don't have time to slow down. And for many of us, I know I'll speak for myself, this resonates with me. Even rest starts to feel stressful. We sit down to relax, and suddenly a part starts making a mental checklist. We try to be present with our kids, our spouse, our friends, and another part is already thinking 3 steps ahead. Even when nothing dangerous is happening, our nervous system can feel like it's bracing against time itself. And in this session, I want to explore that through an internal family systems lens, parts work lens, as we do here. Because often the rushed feeling is not actually who we are. It's a part of us trying very hard to help. I've been noticing this in my own life lately. A while back, I had one of those mornings where technically nothing was wrong, but internally I felt incredibly pressured. And if I'm honest, I often wake up in the mornings feeling pressure. And it's good to check in with what's going on inside. But this time I had something like client sessions later that day, a live stream coming up, emails I needed to answer, content ideas floating around in my head, a few unfinished projects, and then normal family life on top of all that. Kids asking questions. Bruno, who's sitting over there in the chair right now being quiet, barking at something only he could see. Meanwhile, the coffee's getting cold or turns off. I hate that 2-hour timer. You know, real life. And I noticed myself moving faster and faster, walking quickly through the house, opening tabs on my computer while checking my phone at the same time, thinking about the next thing before finishing the current thing. And at one point, one of my kids started telling me a story or wanted to tell me a story, and I caught myself halfway listening while mentally organizing my schedule. And that moment really hit me hard when I paused to think about it, because externally I was there, but internally I was already gone. And I noticed this familiar urgency inside me, this part of me that believes if you slow down, everything will fall apart. Maybe you know that feeling too. In IFS, we might understand this as a manager, a part trying to stay ahead, trying to prevent failure, chaos, disappointment, or overwhelm. And honestly, these parts are often incredibly capable. They help us succeed, they help us provide, they help us show up responsibly. But sometimes they carry the exhausting belief that our worth is tied to productivity, or that slowing down equals danger. And many of these parts learned that honestly. Maybe growing up, there wasn't space to rest. Maybe love felt connected to achievement. Maybe things were unpredictable. And staying busy felt safer than slowing down long enough to feel vulnerable. For some of us, slowing down creates anxiety because underneath the motion are emotions waiting to be felt: grief, loneliness, fear, shame, exhaustion. So a rushing part may not simply be trying to make you productive. It may also be trying to protect you from what emerges in stillness. And when we understand that, we can begin relating to those parts with more compassion instead of frustration. One of the things that we often say in the IFS world is all parts are welcome. That includes the rush parts too, not just the calm, spiritual, grounded parts, the hurried parts, the striving parts, the pressure filled parts. They belong too. And sometimes the first step isn't forcing yourself to slow down. Sometimes the first step is simply noticing. Part of me feels rushed right now. That's different from becoming the rushed part. That small shift matters because when we blend with these parts, their urgency becomes our entire reality. Everything feels like an emergency. Everything feels time sensitive. But when we begin unblending, even just a little, we can become curious. What is this part afraid would happen if I slowed down? That question alone can open so much. Sometimes when I check in with my own rushing parts, I notice they're terrified of disappointing people or wasting opportunities or not doing enough or falling behind financially or being seen as lazy. And honestly, sometimes these parts carry old stories from much earlier in life. Stories that live in the nervous system long after circumstances have changed. And the interesting thing is, the more we fight these parts, the more intense they often become. Because now they not only feel responsible for keeping life together, they also feel rejected. So instead of attacking the rushed part, what if we slowed down just enough to acknowledge it? Not fixing, not forcing, just noticing. I think one of the greatest misunderstandings about slowing down is that people assume it means becoming passive or unproductive. But slowing down internally is not the same thing as giving up externally. You can still work hard. You can still have goals. You can still build meaningful things. But the energy underneath it changes. Instead of frantic motion, there can be steadiness, presence, clarity, intentionality. I've noticed that when I'm deeply blended with rushing parts, I actually become less effective. I move faster but think less clearly. I multitask more but feel less connected. I may produce more, and that's a maybe. But even if I do, I enjoy less. And eventually my body starts telling the truth. Fatigue, tension, irritability, brain fog, disconnection. Sometimes our bodies begin asking for the slowness our protectors are afraid of. There's also something deeply spiritual about slowing down, not performative slowness, not aesthetic slowness, real slowness. The kind where you become present enough to actually inhabit your own life again, to notice your breathing, to taste your food, to hear your child's story, to feel the sun for 10 seconds without reaching for your phone. And I'm speaking to myself here. I'm taking some of these in too. Those moments matter more than we often realize. And sometimes healing begins there, not in dramatic breakthroughs, but in tiny moments of returning again and again. I remember another moment recently. I was outside by the fire pit and the 4 hens that we have pecking around one evening. And the sun was beginning to set and everything was getting quiet except for some of the birds still chirping before they turned in. And I noticed this part of me already mentally thinking back through the day, beginning to obsess a little, planning content, thinking about emails, calculating time. And for just a moment, I stopped. I literally just sat there. And I remember saying internally to those parts, I know you're trying to help. That simple acknowledgement shifted something. The urgency softened just enough, not completely, but enough for me to actually be there, enough to notice the evening instead of rushing through it. And honestly, I think many of us are starving for moments like that, moments where we stop abandoning ourselves in the name of productivity. So if you've been feeling rushed lately, I just want to gently remind you you're not a machine. Your nervous system was not designed for constant acceleration. And your worth is not measured by how optimized you are. And this is coming from someone who listens to productivity podcasts and often have to remind myself of what I'm reminding you of now. But our worth is not measured by how optimized we are. Sometimes the most healing thing you and I can do is pause long enough to notice who inside is afraid of slowing down, and then offer that part a little compassion, not criticism, not shame, just presence. I want to leave you with a small practice today. Maybe sometime today, try this. Pause for 1 minute. That's all, 1 minute. Take one slow breath and simply ask who's here right now. Maybe you notice pressure, maybe anxiety, maybe urgency. Then ask, how do I feel toward this part? If judgment shows up, that's okay. Just notice. And then maybe offer this simple phrase: I don't have to abandon myself to keep moving forward. You can move through life without constantly running from yourself. And little by little, your system can learn that slowing down does not mean falling behind. Sometimes it means finally arriving. Thanks for spending this time with me. in this session. And until the next session, take a breath, notice who's here, and remember you're not alone. You're beloved, parts and all. And even a drop of self is enough. That wraps up another episode of IFS Meditations and Insights. If today's episode was meaningful to you, please follow, subscribe, and share with someone who might need it. A positive review helps more people find this healing work. And don't forget, you can get your free IFS meditations and the Self-Led Pause Starter Kit at exploreifs.com. And until the next session, be gentle with yourself. I'll try to do the same because we're beloved human beings.